The Allen Line Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
In less than 10 years, the EPA's proposed emission standards would require 25% of new trucks sold in the U.S. to be all electric. We speak with OOIDA's Government Affairs Department about what it calls an assault on truckers and what you can do to voice your opinion. Over the past few years, many truckers have been the victims of predatory towing practices. Now the FMCSA has scheduled a meeting to examine the issue. I'll get the details on that and more from OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. And finally, 4 states have acted this year to address predatory towing and booting of commercial motor vehicles. Scott Thompson covers that and more with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. In a rare move, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has granted an exemption from cargo securement regulations for ag haulers. The agency granting a provisional exemption renewal to the Agricultural and Food Transporters Conference, or AFTC. It allows alternative methods for the securement of agricultural commodities transported in wood and plastic boxes and bins and large fiberglass tubs, along with hay, straw, and cotton bales that are grouped into larger singular units. AFTC first applied for an exemption in 2015, arguing it would enhance safety because the alternative securement methods exceed existing standards. In 2019, FMCSA granted a 5-year exemption. AFTC then requested a 5-year renewal of the exemption starting this year. Instead, the agency has granted a provisional renewal that will run through October 15th so it can collect feedback from the public and analyze data. The amount of freight transported by motor carriers was up last month compared to both the previous month and previous year. That's according to the ATA For-Hire Truck Tonnage Index for May. Tonnage was 1.5% up compared to a year earlier last month, the first year-over-year gain in 15 months. On a month-to-month basis, tonnage was up 3.6% compared to April. ATA Chief Economist Bob Costello said in a news release that while there was clearly an increase in freight before the Memorial Day holiday, it's still too early to say whether this is the start of a long-awaited recovery in the truck freight market. Some other caveats as well. ATA calculates the index based on surveys from its membership, and the results depict the contract freight market more than the spot market. Another autonomous truck company has entered the fray. Waabi says it has raised $200 million in funding and will use that money to deploy fully driverless trucks in Texas starting next year. The company claims its AI system is capable of human-like reasoning, allowing it to react to any situation that might happen on the road, including those it has never seen before. Waabi also claims the system requires significantly less training data and reduces the need for extensive on-road testing. Waabi anticipates deploying fully driverless trucks in Texas sometime next year. In April, Waabi signed a multi-year lease on an autonomous trucking terminal near Dallas. Last year, the company began hauling autonomous loads with Uber Freight between Dallas and Houston. Massachusetts is the latest state to warn toll users about a scam going around. Easy Drive MA customers are the target here. The Massachusetts DOT said scammers are claiming to represent the state's tolling agency and requesting payments for unpaid tolls. Customers are reminded that Easy Drive MA will never request payment by text message. If you receive such a text, email, or similar message that claims to be from Easy Drive MA or any tolling agency, do not click on any links. If you do by mistake, do what you can to secure your personal information and financial accounts and dispute any unfamiliar charges. You should also delete the text from your phone and file a complaint with the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center at www.ic3.gov. Similar text messaging scams have been reported across the country. The Easy Pass group, comprised of tolling agencies and companies in 19 states, informed customers nationwide about ongoing text messaging scam attempts in late April. The FBI is investigating. The American Transportation Research Institute has new research into the obstacles the industry is facing, getting more women into the industry and staying there. The 61-page report details 6 key challenges facing female truck drivers. and includes strategies for making the industry a more welcoming place for women. The challenges compiled through surveys, focus groups, and other means include a negative industry image, an inability to complete training requirements, and limited parking and restroom facilities while on the job. ATRI suggests that carriers implement women-specific recruiting and retention initiatives after finding that those who already do have a higher percentage of female drivers than those without, 8.1% compared to 5%. The report comes amid data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that show that the percentage of female truck drivers declined last year for the first time since 2015. In 2022, the percentage of female truck drivers was 8.1%. Last year, it dropped to 6.9%. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency says a truck driver who caused a deadly crash in Colorado last week was in the U.S. illegally. ICE officials told Denver 7 that Ignacio Cruz Mendoza had been ordered to return to Mexico 2 weeks before the crash along U.S. 285. It was one of 16 times he had been arrested and deported, dating all the way back to 2002. One person was killed when the semi Cruz Mendoza was driving rolled over, dumping a load of pipes and angle iron onto 5 vehicles. He faces several misdemeanor charges right now, although more could be filed after the Colorado State Patrol finishes its investigation. Cruz Mendoza was driving for Monique Trucking at the time of the crash. The company has not responded to requests for comment. Investigators, however, have said that the company has a history of ELD violations and hiring unlicensed drivers. A temporary detour being built in response to the collapse of Wyoming's Teton Pass is almost ready for traffic. The Wyoming DOT says the road is expected to be open in the coming days. The Teton Pass in Jackson has been closed to all traffic since early June because of a landslide. Whether heavy trucks will be able to use that temporary detour remains to be seen. The Wyoming DOT says weight restrictions could be in place but will be determined shortly before the road opens. Canadian officials are reminding truck drivers about restrictions along Rogers Pass in Glacier National Park this summer. Parks Canada said in a news release that stopping in the Rogers Pass summit area is limited to 30 minutes or less. The restriction is due to the threat of extreme weather in the area, which can range from snow to extreme rainfall events in the summer. It's also a high-traffic area during the summer months as well, meaning more cars and more pedestrians, so take care if traveling through. Love's has a new travel stop in southwest Missouri. The location in Sarcoxie off Interstate 44 near Joplin adds 89 truck parking spots to the area. And finally, a British farmer who lost a Rolex watch more than 50 years ago never expected he'd see it again, but it found its way back to him recently. UPI reports that James Steele bought the watch after his 21st birthday in 1950, but lost it in a field about 20 years later while working on his farm. Fast forward to present day when the 95-year-old let a treasure hunter use his metal detector to find old coins on the property. That's how the watch turned up. As for where it's been all these years, Steele thinks a cow might have accidentally eaten it and passed it. The watch doesn't work anymore, but is in pretty good condition otherwise. Steele said he does not plan to have the watch repaired, but is glad to have it back as a keepsake. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Do you have a news tip? Maybe you have a comment about something you heard on the air, or maybe you just have a question about something happening in the trucking industry. Email us at landlinenow@ooida.com. Again, that email address is landlinenow@ooida.com. On Saturday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Ohio Vintage Truck Reunion. That takes place in Ashland, Ohio. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, Ashley Blackford discusses the push for electric trucks with OOIDA's George O'Connor. I'll discuss FMCSA's plans to tackle the predatory towing issue with OOIDA's Jay Grimes, and Scott Thompson covers state efforts on predatory towing with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Every year, 28 million people are trafficked globally. The Your Roads, Their Freedom campaign seeks to raise awareness in the transport industry. Truck and bus drivers, be vigilant on the roads. If you see something suspicious, text 233-733 or be free.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. The mission of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association is to fight for the rights of all truckers, and one of those fights right now is on proposed emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles. I recently spoke with our Government Affairs Department about what's happening and what OOIDA is doing to fight back. George O'Connor joins me now. He is the Director of Communications for OOIDA. George, how are you doing today?
Doing all right, Ashley. How are you?
I'm doing well. So today we are talking about electric vehicles, specifically electric trucks. Now, OOIDA recently posted a page on the Fighting for Truckers website that details some facts, information, and resources on what's currently going on. I want to begin with that. What is currently going on?
Sure. So let's take a step back real quick and how we got here. So the EPA went through a rulemaking process called the Phase 3 Greenhouse Gas Emissions Standard for heavy-duty vehicles. So they released their final rule in March of this year that would require 25% of new heavy trucks sold in the United States to be all electric by 2032. So it might seem like a little far off time frame, but as anyone who's probably watching or listening to this, it's really not if you're trying to plan a business. Or if you're familiar with the manufacturing process for any of these large vehicles. So that final rule came through in March. OOIDA has been vehemently against it all throughout the process, lodged comments. So we thank all of our members and non-members who also maybe have filed comments with the EPA raising these concerns. But as is the case sometimes with the EPA, they didn't listen to the truckers. So they went through with this final rule, and it's on the books now. So the next procedural step is Congress getting involved with a Congressional Review Act resolution. We don't necessarily need to go into the nitty-gritty of legislative and parliamentary procedure here, but big picture is that if these resolutions that have been introduced in the House and the Senate go through, it could repeal the regulation ultimately. So what we're doing now is encouraging folks to go to fightingfortruckers.com on this page that we have recently launched. And what we would say is accurately titled the EPA Assault on Truckers, because that's how we perceive it, and that's what our members perceive as well. So what you'll find here is some top line statistics about what the rule actually is. Again, 25% of new heavy-duty trucks across the United States by 2032 must be all electric. So we're talking under 10 years for a massive, massive transformation of the supply chain. So what does that mean for small business truckers who might not be able to scale a large fleet and come in line with these regulations? Well, the cost differential between a diesel and an electric truck, we're talking the difference between about $180,000 on average to $400,000 for an EV truck. So that's just the cost piece of this. Then you talk about the operational issues. Well, you probably fill your diesel engine in about 15, 20 minutes, probably under a half hour, right? Well, you're looking at overnight charging for these EV trucks. So up to 10 hours, let alone the charging infrastructure that, as is the case with even on the passenger vehicle EV charging, it's been a bit of a disaster in its rollout. So the idea that we're going to have this massive charging network as well as adoption of these vehicles is not likely. So we're raising the alarms of just, hey, you can't just put out these targets and then expect everything to come into line. You have to be working with reality. So what we're encouraging folks to do is contact their members of Congress to tell them to support these resolutions that I referenced that are both in the House and the Senate. HJ Res 133 is from Representative Fulcher. He's from Idaho. And SJ Res 74 is a resolution from Senator Sullivan from Alaska. Now, their constituents hopefully have already been engaging with them on this. And certainly if you hear from your constituents, from your voters, that's why you want to be the face of this legislation and get involved. But if you're a trucker and if anything I said previously has concerned you of, holy cow, what are they thinking at the EPA? You need to contact your representatives and tell them to support the legislation to ensure that it gets a vote on the floor. We can get this stuff going. So fightingfortruckers.com. This is under the trucking policy page, and it's EPA assault on truckers.
Has anyone in government addressed those concerns of the lack of charging, the cost? Has anyone talked about that?
Well, what they'll do is they'll come the justification, the economic justification from EPA, because we've lodged these concerns with the EPA and told them, like, look, the math here does not add up. And, they can torture their data till, the cows come home. And that seems to be what they've done, because they say, well, if you squint really closely and all of these things align, then we can get to these target points. But it's quite frankly some bureaucrats looking at spreadsheets, not people on the ground, truckers that are actually dealing with this equipment and know the limitations of some of these EV trucks. Because we've talked to folks about these concerns. And to a point on the grid and on charging infrastructure, there was a trucking company in Joliet, Illinois. They wanted to convert their fleet to these EV trucks, 30 trucks. They had this plan. They, wanted to do the right thing, get ahead of technology, or whatever their justification may have been. So they went through it. They started going through the process, and they were contacted by the local utility company and said, the local utility company told them, you guys can't do this. And, they naturally asked why. Well, because the electric draw on the grid for 30 EV trucks is going to be greater than the draw on the grid for the entire city of Joliet, Illinois. So feasibility, these kinds of things, we can bring them to the attention of the regulators, but sometimes they have their own, initiatives that they need to go through, and quite frankly, they haven't listened. So we're working with Congress to make sure that they do listen.
What do you say to a truck driver who, for the reasons that they should care about this? Say you've got somebody who's like, well, I've got my truck. I'll pour as much money into it that I need to keep this diesel going. What do you say to them?
I'd say that's, probably a good thing to do at this point, because this is these regulations are on trucks sold. So, as we also say, when it comes to environmental issues, the diesel engine has gotten incredibly clean over the last number of years. These are not smog belching engines from the 1980s that sometimes show up on environmental messaging documents. The trucks have gotten significantly cleaner. Emissions have gone down over the years, and this is really a bridge too far of feasibility. So, would obviously stay in compliance with whatever the federal regulations are. But from a business, we're not here to advise on business practices, but we'll allow the free market and participants in the free market to do the math.
Does the OIDA think this could have kind of the opposite effect of what they're hoping for, as far as people keeping older trucks on the road and pouring more money into them because they don't want to shell out $400,000, and understandably so?
Very well could be the case. It's, as I mentioned early on in this conversation, the larger fleets are able to purchase at scale and come into compliance more easily than if you're a mom and pop truck operation. You own maybe 1-2 trucks under 10. $400,000 on a truck is not going to to be feasible. It's really not. So we'd say probably extend the lifetime of your diesel engine as much as possible, and we'll leave it to you to do the math and look at your balance sheet, look at your operating costs, and do the math. It's a free market.
And you touched on this a little bit. What has OOIDA done in the fight against this?
Right. So we've participated in the comment period. We've tried to make our voice heard. We've organized with other organizations to raise the issue, at least awareness among legislators, regulators. But again, if the EPA has sort of a top-down approach and doesn't listen to industry, and they just kind of go through and put a regulation out there and say, well, you guys figure it out. We can't make the regulation ourselves. We can make our voice heard. And I would encourage everyone who's watching or listening to this to go on to fightingfortruckers.com and contact the other branch of government, which is Congress, and get them involved, because there are solutions on the table to fight back against this.
Now, also on that page, we have a clip of Louis Pugh, who's OOIDA's executive vice president, talking to Fox Business about the emissions rule for heavy-duty trucks. How often is OOIDA called upon to talk about this topic?
Right. So we're actually seen as a leader on fighting against this regulation, and I would put it this way: any trucking issue that negatively affects our members, we're going to be the leader on. We're going to be forward-leaning. We're going to be taking initiative. We're going to be on the Fox shows. We're going to be on any media outlet that is willing to listen to us and hear our concerns. We're going to be out there.
And how important is it, for some who may be listening to this and thinking, I've never contacted a lawmaker before, I don't know how to do that. Explain to me the process that Fighting for Truckers makes it very easy to do.
We make it super simple. As Louis mentions quite frequently when he talks about fightingfortruckers.com, it's easier to go on this website and send a letter, an email to your representative than it is to go on social media and complain. So we would encourage taking that energy and putting it in a productive way of getting in touch with lawmakers, because it actually does have an effect. The more lawmakers hear from their constituents about these issues, the more likely they're going to jump on as co-sponsors. They're going to be talking about it in their communities. It's going to be because not every lawmaker is a trucking expert. Not every lawmaker is a transportation expert. So if they're not hearing from us, if they're not hearing from their constituents, they might not be aware of these issues, as crazy as it sounds. So what we'd encourage folks to do is go on fightingfortruckers.com. On this page that I mentioned, the EPA assault on truckers, on the right side, you just need to essentially put your zip code in, your email address, and you're off and running to make sure that you're sending this. You can customize your message to your member of Congress, tell them how this affects your business, would affect your business, because that actually goes a little further when persuading lawmakers. So we'd encourage you to do that. And for any of our main policy issues, there's going to be a page for that. And particularly if there's a legislative component or a regulatory component that allows for public input, there's going to be a way that we make it super simple for you to make your voice heard with your member of Congress or with the appropriate regulator. So we've got stuff on speed limiters, we've got stuff on parking, we've got stuff on overtime pay, minimum insurance levels that we're fighting against, broker fraud, restroom access, these really top of the line issues that we hear from our members about all the time. We're working on it in Congress too, working with the administration at times, but we need your help. This is a grassroots effort and we need everyone involved.
All right, George, thank you so much.
Hey, sure thing, Ashley.
That was George O'Connor, Director of Communications for OOIDA. For more information on this topic, you can visit fightingfortruckers.com. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Loadboard Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Loadboard Pro. Attention professional drivers, do you owe money to the IRS? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. Call for help now, 855-976-4291. That's 855-976-4291.
Over the past few years, many truckers have been the victims of predatory towing practices. Now, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has scheduled a meeting to examine the issue. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Reddig. I'm joined, as always, by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, how are you doing?
Doing well, Mark. Good to be with you.
Well, glad to have you here. Before we get into the particulars of this meeting, I always like to make sure that we're kind of on the same page with the listeners. Can you just briefly explain what we mean by the term predatory towing?
Yeah, it really, specifically, there's a few different examples of predatory towing, but basically getting charged excessive or unknown fees when your truck has to be towed off the road. And unfortunately, we see this practice continue to be prevalent in quite a few states. OOIDA has worked with a number of state legislatures to crack down on these excessive towing fees, and FMCSA has taken notice, and they're going to host, I believe kind of for the first time, a public meeting on transparency in fees that commercial motor vehicle operators are charged for recovery.
A lot of this involves, I think, what's called non-consensual towing, essentially where there's an accident and the trucker has a tow called by the law enforcement where they don't have a choice. And I know those can get particularly large. Can you give folks an idea of how big the towing bills we're talking about can get?
Yeah. So the OOIDA Foundation has kind of teamed up with the American Trucking Research Institute to look at predatory towing fees. And, when looking at predatory towing bills, the overall total pre-tax average for a crash-related tow, around $9,000. Predatory towing bills averaged $18,000, so almost twice as that. When surveyed, 82% of motor carriers listed as experiencing excessive rates, about the same number unwarranted additional service charges as the two most common and impactful forms of predatory towing. So these tow bills can run in the tens of thousands of dollars, and for a small business trucker can be substantial and especially devastating.
Something else that I wanted to ask you about, and I don't know if this is going to figure into their discussions or not, but I know in the past few months when trucks get booted, that's also started to figure into this. There are tow companies that engage in that. Are they going to look at that issue at all, or is this strictly on the towing side?
It's primarily focused on the towing side, but I really think it's going to be open to kind of all aspects. So that certainly could come up in the discussion tomorrow. It's gonna be interesting. It's going to be a 3-hour meeting. Representatives from OOIDA will be in person. The meeting's also going to be held via webcast as well. So if anyone can't make it to Washington, it's open to the public, and they can, voice their experiences if they've, been the victim of these predatory towing practices. And I'm really hopeful that FMCSA is going to hear some perspectives from industry, from drivers, on ways that they can really help eliminate this practice. And, FMCSA is hosting this hearing kind of in conjunction with the rulemaking from the Federal Trade Commission, which seeks to ban junk fees throughout a number of industries. That proposal really caught FMCSA's eye. They've submitted comments specifically related to predatory and non-consensual towing. So I think the meeting tomorrow is going to help FMCSA gather more information and perhaps, work more cooperatively as the Federal Trade Commission, hopefully advances and finalizes their rulemaking related to these junk fees.
You mentioned, of course, that FMCSA is aware of what the FTC is doing here. But I'm curious, do we know what prompted the agency to take up this issue on their own? What prompted them to actually look at having a meeting and examine the topic?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of this rulemaking that's kind of going through the process with the Federal Trade Commission. FMCSA submitted some specific comments relating to practices that they've heard about from industry stakeholders. So you've got that on one hand, but I'm pretty sure that FMCSA kind of from their own jurisdictional authority wants to kind of look at this, see what the impacts are, especially as it relates to safety as well. When you have some small businesses, traditionally the safest operators, safest drivers on the road, if they're getting these excessive tow bills that pushes them out of the industry, that's going to have an adverse effect on highway safety. So I think there's a few motivations for FMCSA to conduct the meeting, but very optimistic that it's going to be, they're going to get some good information and really, hear from the industry who's been dealing with this issue for years, maybe hear how different organizations have worked with different states and maybe some recommendations for how FMCSA can move forward.
Do we know who they're inviting to the meeting, or is this something where anyone in trucking can take part?
Yeah, so it's open to the public. I know they're going to be hearing specifically from some associations who have a pretty good deal of experience with predatory towing, including OOIDA. I believe the American Trucking Association is going to be on hand too, and perhaps some associations representing the towing industry. So I think it'll be a combination of some trade associations, but also hopeful there's going to be some significant participation from the general public tuning in. And these listening sessions, these public meetings are always a good opportunity for drivers to make their voices heard. So really hoping, some drivers who have some insight when it comes to predatory towing practices can participate as well.
And folks, of course, we will have that information on how you can take part in this meeting on our website, landlinenow.com. I want to get back to something you said earlier, Jay. You talked about OOIDA working with state legislatures, and the association's been involved in the issue for some time. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the association has done in terms of working on the predatory towing issue?
Yeah, so we've worked with quite a few different states really to try and create some oversight in how these towing practices are coordinated, and have had some mixed success. You mentioned booting in Tennessee. Governor Bill Lee has signed into a law that is going to include comprehensive reforms to protect drivers and other motorists from predatory towing practices. In Maryland, we've created sort of a task force to review with participation from towing industry representatives as well to crack down on these practices, to kind of create some limits on these fees that, create some transparency where kind of the main practice that you mentioned. Law enforcement calls a towing company. The towing company has these hidden fees, no caps, and when the trucker gets the bill when they're recovering their vehicle, as we mentioned, in the tens of thousands of dollars. So really putting in practices, regulations, laws that establish set limits, establish practices that make sure the consumer, the driver, the motorist is aware of what the fees are going to be when the tow takes place.
Okay. Let's move on to another topic here. Another FMCSA committee or task force here. The Truck Leasing Task Force has held another meeting, and while those meetings are not necessarily exciting in this case, some interesting news came out of the gathering, and it involves two members of the committee who previously were defending the lease purchase model. Jay, could you please tell us who they are and what they said at this most recent meeting?
Right, and just kind of as a refresher, the Truck Leasing Task Force was established back in 2021. They've met quite a number of times over the past year or so, and the meeting last week was their first meeting since big public listening session was held during the Matt's Trucking Show. And one of the main discussion topics throughout the meeting certainly has been this focus on predatory lease purchase agreements, where individuals who kind of have the desire, have a hope to go into the trucking industry, get sold on this pipe dream of leasing to own their own vehicle. Unfortunately, the contracts, the leases really make sure that the individual can never meet the lease payments, can never, at the end of the day, take control and ownership of the vehicle, and end up excessive debt. A lot of times they end up having to get out of the leasing contract. They leave the industry, and really some unfortunate, we think unlawful practices going on with these predatory lease purchase contracts. Main discussion point among the committee has been to certainly they want to improve the lease purchase model. Many of the committee members have voiced opinion to outright eliminate it in some way. But some members of the committee have said, well, no, we kind of do need to keep this in place for individuals when it's done the right way. There have been limited instances where it does work out. But after the public listening session at Matt's, and we really heard from quite a few individuals who have had these negative experiences, Tamara Brock, a task force member representing independent owner-operators, said the stories from the listening session and other stories that she's heard since kind of changed her tune and caused her to think differently. She said, when I first started on the committee, I was gung-ho about keeping these arrangements, but over the past few months, I've changed my mind completely. This had an impact also on Steve Rush, who has had a lot of experiences with the lease purchase model. And, when he heard from Tamara in earlier meetings, he kind of, sympathized with her. But I think he kind of was glad to hear Tamara changed her mind. And he said the lease purchase model needs to go away. The evil, and I mean the evil, far outweighs the minuscule good that comes out of it. So this committee as a whole, I think, has been pretty unanimous in cracking down on these lease purchase agreements, and everything that we heard from the meeting last week continues to point in that direction. One of the big updates we also heard was that the committee is kind of gearing up to conclude their work and submit their report by November of this year.
Okay. We've got one more topic in about the 2 minutes we have left here. And of course, it's UCR, as it does every year.
Right.
The Unified Carrier Registration System has set its rates for the coming year. And this year's going to be a little bit different than previously. Very quickly, talk a little bit about what is happening in terms of these UCR fees. What's coming up this next year?
Yeah, so UCR for the first time in a couple of years is actually going to be raising their fees for 2025, going to be 25% higher than they were in 2024. Depending, again, on which of these UCR brackets you're in, the changes are going to be a little different. But 2 trucks or less, 2024, they were $37. 2025, going to be $46. And again, the UCR program is really a racket that we've opposed for years. It's really unfair towards small business carriers who have the smaller fleet sizes and charging them a higher percentage of fees, and not to mention little transparency of where all the fee money is going with UCR and states. So we're continuing to fight against the UCR program, which is active, I think, in about 41 states across the country. But unfortunately for 2025, we're going to see 25% higher fees.
Okay. Well, Jay, we're running low on time here, but I want to thank you very much for all the information. We sure appreciate it.
All right, Mark. We'll see you next time.
I've been talking with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. And folks, of course, we were talking at the beginning of this about the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's predatory towing meeting. We will have that information on how you can take part on our website. Again, that's at landlinenow.com. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. We'll close things out today with our weekly state legislative update. We'll take a look at a few states here taking action against predatory towing practices and another that's putting a mandate into effect for speed assistance technology. Here to break it all down for us is Keith Goebel. As always, Keith is the state legislative editor at Landline Magazine, and he joins us here now in Studio A. Keith, how you doing?
Scott, doing all right. Have you made your way out to any water parks yet this summer?
Not yet. The summer is young, though. We still have a couple months.
Yeah, it is. We got some time.
Heat and sun and water and all that good stuff.
Yeah, there's some time for that.
We shall see. We're not going to talk about that today, unfortunately. We're going to talk about predatory towing. We've got a few states. We've talked about a couple of them, I know, taking action here on July 1st with new laws. We're going to start here with Tennessee, a state that's been in the headlines quite a bit with regard to predatory towing, thanks to the alleged activities of A1's Towing in Memphis. But this law is going to take effect for everybody here, and it's going to put some protections in place.
Yeah, some comprehensive reforms that are included in this legislation. It was a House Senate bill package that made its way through the State House and onto the governor's desk, which had been signed. And yeah, we're a mere days away from these protections taking place. And some of the highlights: limiting booting at 2 commercial lots. It can only be, if you're gonna be booting a vehicle, it can only be done on a commercial lot. And if that is to take place, this new law requires that a licensed parking attendant be on the scene and be available to remove the boot within 45 minutes of it from it being put on. And in addition to that, the fee to remove a boot would be capped. It specifies that it can be up to $75. So stuff like that. If there's a tow that's in process, but the vehicle has not yet left the parking area, the towing company would be required to release the vehicle to the owner, and that fee to get it released could not be more than $100. So, putting some caps in place and those requirements that if the vehicle essentially is still on the scene, allowing the vehicle to be released.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like these provisions were tailor-made for A1's Towing, which, again, these alleged booting practices that they've been doing there and causing all sorts of problems. But again, for everybody in the state, this will help them out.
Yeah, and it is worth pointing out. There's one more provision in there that I want to mention, and it specifically addresses commercial vehicles. And this new law will make it illegal. You would not be able to boot or put a device to immobilize any truck and trailer, as long as that truck and trailer is clearly identified as a commercial vehicle with a U.S. DOT number, or if it has a commercial license plate. So while these, the rules that we were talking about apply to all vehicles there in the state, they did add this specific provision to cover some additional concerns that the trucking industry has.
There you go. Florida, a state notorious for predatory towing practices. We've talked about this one before, but also July 1st, a new law taking effect there. It's going to establish a number of things here, and it really should change the landscape there in Florida.
Yeah, a lot of the focus here with this new law is putting in place maximum rates that towers can charge, like for a cleanup of a non-consensual tow. permitting cities to enact their own rates with a cap on them. Kind of the highlights there of it, in addition to requiring that tow rates be posted online, counties, cities, the highway patrol, they're being mandated here with this new law. They have to establish a process for investigating and resolving complaints regarding fees that may be charged in excess of the rates, and also like stuff like making sure that a rate sheet is available at the scene of the tow, so that an owner or operator who's there would be able to see what the fees are going to be. Also making rates available online on a company's website, that sort of thing. So yeah, a lot of moving in the right direction. That I know the Florida Trucking Association president had said that this new law will help to weed out the predatory towing tactics that they have there, and just to make the entire industry a little bit better and safer.
Moving to the west here to Mississippi from Florida, they're doing this a little bit differently. A new law again, July 1st, but they're creating an advisory committee, I believe, as part of this new law, just one part of the new law. But what are they doing there in Mississippi, and how is it going to change things? Yeah, that advisory committee, it's going to be within the Commercial Transportation Division of their Public Safety Department. But yeah, this new panel, they're going to be responsible for setting regulations for towing and recovery service providers, also establishing maximum towing and storage rates for, again, focus being on non-consensual tows. In addition to that, prohibiting the use of per-pound billing for non-consensual tows, and also implementing some disciplinary action against a service provider, a towing and recovery provider, establishing that if they don't adhere to these new rules. But yeah, again, a lot of action across the country, and it may be a coincidence. These are all taking effect the 1st of July, in addition to Virginia, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Mm-hmm. But we're not done on this topic. North Carolina is another state that's got multiple bills that deal with towing concerns. It's ongoing there, and hope to have something available online and talk about here on the radio shortly. Yeah, it does seem like we have more awareness about this problem. And again, we have states taking action on it as well. So they recognize that it's a problem and are doing something about it. And it does seem like we're trending in that direction. You mentioned Virginia. Let's get to them real quick here. 2 laws, I think, taking effect July 1st, both dealing with predatory towing, right? Yeah, and really the focus is on solicitation, prohibiting tow truck drivers from going going to a scene of any disabled wrecked vehicle and trying to essentially, if you've got a vehicle driver or an owner who has requested a tow and they're waiting on the scene for that requested tow, trying to prevent, with a couple different measures here, somebody from swooping in and taking that tow out from underneath the towing service that was called on, and also some significant fines for towing operators, recovery operators, if they partake in this type of activity where it can be up to like $1,000 fine and possibly some jail time if they're found to be in violation. And we'll close things out here. We don't have a lot of time, but let's keep people posted on what's going on in California. There's a bill there you're tracking that would put a new mandate into effect for all cars and trucks sold in the state, and the mandate has to do with speed. Yeah, we talked about this. This is a bill that's been passed by the California Senate. It's been revised. As it was introduced, it required every car, truck, bus there in the state to be equipped, those that are manufactured and sold in the state, to be equipped with a speed governor. That provision was removed, and instead including what is called a passive intelligent speed assistance. So essentially, if you're driving down the road and you exceed the posted speed by 10 miles per hour,
that you would get a notification, and what you get, like the seat rattling maybe, or you get a little indicator on your dash, letting you know that you're exceeding the posted speed limit. They've also, I think we talked about it the last time that we were on here. They had removed this bill included a provision for underride guards to be included for side underride guards on every truck, trailer, or semi-trailer that's in excess of 10,000 pounds there in California. That provision was removed.
There it is. Keith, that was quick, to the point, and we appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, that was Keith Goebel of Lane Line Magazine, and that's our show for today. We thank you for tuning in. If you want to catch up with us again, we've got another show right around the corner. We hope to see you then.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
Get the most power and performance out of your rig with Howe's Diesel Defender. It provides maximum lubricity and contains specialized IDX4 detergent to clean and prevent deposits and safely removes harmful water. Visit HowesProducts.com for more information.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.